The screen opens with a dark, grainy image of an old airport terminal, flickering lights casting long shadows over the empty room. The sound of a heartbeat echoes through the silence as the narrator speaks in a low, suspenseful tone. He was a master of deception, a criminal who wore many faces. For years he moved through the world, pretending to be someone else, fooling the best of us. But behind the charm and confidence there was a terrifying truth. Frank Abagnale Jr. was one of the most brilliant con artists to ever live. The title, The Great Impostor. The true crime story of Frank Abagnale Jr. appears in bold, dark letters. In the 1960s, a young man, barely in his 20s, became one of the most notorious criminals in history. His name was Frank Abagnale Jr., but to those around him he was a pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, a man of many talents. The only problem? None of it was real. Frank was born in 1948 in Bronxville, New York. As a teenager, his life took a dark turn. When his parents divorced, Frank began rebelling, taking on an adventurous streak that would lead him down a dangerous path. It was at the age of 16 that Frank began toying with the idea of impersonation. By the age of 17, Frank's cons escalated. He forged a high school diploma and landed a job as a substitute teacher in a prestigious school. He was a teenager, barely old enough to drive, yet he stood in front of classrooms, teaching students as if he had the credentials to do so. The world had no idea. Frank was an imposter. But that was just the beginning. Frank didn't stop at teaching. By 18 he posed as a Pan Am pilot flying all over the world. He stole uniforms, forged pilots' licenses, and even convinced airlines to let him fly for free. How did he get away with it? Simple. He acted with such authority and confidence that no one questioned him. For years, Frank was able to fool the entire world. He lived in luxury, enjoying perks that came with his fake professions. He even found time to scam banks and steal millions through elaborate check forgeries. He used every trick in the book, disguises, fake IDs, and lies to stay one step ahead of the law. Frank's life of crime took him across the globe. He impersonated a doctor at a Georgia hospital, tricking staff into thinking he was a licensed pediatrician. He even convinced them to let him treat patients. His audacity knew no bounds. He was a criminal, but with the charm and charisma to make even the most skeptical people believe in his false persona. His most impressive deception came when he posed as a lawyer in Louisiana. Frank, who had no legal training whatsoever, passed the bar exam by using a fraudulent ID. He was hired as a lawyer and began representing clients, even negotiating settlements. But his biggest con was about to catch up with him. By 1969, after years of eluding authorities, Frank's luck finally ran out. He was captured in France, where he had been living under yet another fake identity. He had evaded capture for nearly 5 years, but the law had finally caught up with him. The world was stunned. How could someone so young, so charming, and so deceptive go undetected for so long? Frank was extradited to the United States, where he faced multiple charges for his crimes. But the story didn't end there. The US government saw Frank not just as a criminal, but as an asset. He had been so successful at impersonating others, they offered him a deal, a reduced prison sentence in exchange for helping the FBI catch other criminals who used the same methods. Frank's cooperation with the FBI led to the capture of countless other criminals. His knowledge of forgeries and impersonation was unparalleled. He served just 5 years of a 12-year sentence before being released on the condition that he would help train law enforcement agencies to recognize fraudulent schemes. Today, Frank Abagnale Jr. is a renowned expert on fraud prevention, working as a consultant for major corporations and government agencies. His story, once one of the most audacious criminal careers in history, is now a cautionary tale. Frank went from a con artist to a trusted advisor, a man who used his own experience to help prevent the very crimes he once committed. Frank Abagnale's story is a haunting reminder that appearances can be deceiving. His success as a master of disguise proves that anyone, no matter how young or seemingly innocent, can manipulate the system. But in the end, even the greatest con artist couldn't escape the consequences of his own actions. From the charm of a young con man to the wisdom of a seasoned fraud expert, Frank Abagnale Jr.'s journey is a wild ride. And though he's turned his life around, his story will forever remain one of the greatest true crime tales ever told.